Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for showing up after a heavy-ish lunch, I'm guessing. So, to make sure you don't fall asleep, we have four very eloquent, experienced news professionals with points of view that have made impact, that make people notice what they say. And thank you all for joining us. We are honored and privileged that all four of you are here with us. So this is called Calling Out Our Own. The idea is to dissect and discuss the idea of news platforms commenting, critiquing, reporting on other news platforms. Is it a good idea, or does it discredit news with one person calling out the other? And just for many of you who are very young over here, I mean, since the coming of social media, this has become a normal thing when you see on digital news, but earlier, it was very rare for news platforms to call each other out, whether on broadcast or in newspapers. It was very rare to name another news organization. And I'm sure Shekhar will correct me if I'm wrong, but rare, you know, I used to see Indian Express and Hindu calling each other out for a few reports, but other than that, I don't really remember news organizations, you know, reporting on another news organization. So Sevanti is the pioneer of that. She has a website called Hoot, although it's not active anymore, it's still archived. So you can check it out, am I right, Sevanti? And it was started about 11 years ago or 12? 17, oh my God, 18. So that's when the internet came about. So I quickly had to calculate in case this was also one of those claims that I sent.
That was the last time Indian markets had such a bad July.
Yeah, as Shekhar says, 2002. But I just had to make sure it wasn't one of those claims that I sent a digital photograph over email when there was no email. But yeah, it's not one of those claims. But so Sevanti, what was the motivation for you to start that? And how did other news organizations or news professionals react to the Hoot?
Okay, so I started it in 2001, early 2001. And as if to confirm that I should have started it, the month after, right after that, Operation Westland happened, with Telka doing this enormous sting and all kinds of implications. So I started it in 2001, which was 10 years after satellite TV had come to India. And when satellite TV came, everybody wanted to write about all the terrible things that were happening. So a lot of newspapers, everybody had TV columns. Nobody wrote about anything other than TV. You didn't have anything on print. And there were all the usual range of media issues which are there today were there then. You had media ownership issues, you had crime coverage, which was an invasion of privacy, you had all kinds of things. But newspapers were not written about, so in fact, there would be discussion among some of us. I remember Shekhar came to one of the early meetings and people took like $500 out of their pockets and said, "Kuch karo." So that wasn't enough, but the point was you couldn't write about the media in media, so you had to have another platform, which was online, because we thought online was cheap and free. So that's how I started it.
Because it didn't exist, but what did you hope to achieve? This would do what? It would improve the standard of coverage, it would make for exciting reading?
The idea is not exciting reading. See, Media Watch essentially is about media accountability. You cover all sectors. Nobody covers you. So it was that if there are issues, and if the Times of India or the Hindustan Times or the Hindu is doing something, you can write about it somewhere. You know, you don't just write about TV. I had already written a TV column for 10 years before that and had been very clearly told, please don't touch print. So the idea was just accountability for all media.
And Shekhar, you can tell us what you think of this practice, but before that, since you are a veteran of print, why was there this conventional kind of wisdom that, like she was instructed, don't write on print? Why did print not comment on print? Was there?
I don't think there was ever any instruction. I think I know the reason you invited me here, so I will do my bit of. I'll give you value for money and your love, both. You structure. I might question the way you have drafted this question. Should media criticize media or not? before media starts criticizing, media should cover the media. And before media covers the media, media must have the ability to cover the media. So what you have today, and the reason in the past media did not cover the media, essentially was because media did not know how to cover the media. And then came magazines like India Today, which covered the media well, and I used to work there. Media Today did great stories on the Indian Express when the Shauri Goenka issue happened. India Today did great stories on what was happening in the Times of India group. Since then, I haven't seen any such stories. In fact, I looked at your program very carefully, and if I'm not familiar with some names, my apologies. But, and I can ask for a show of hands in this hall, I will just count India's biggest media organizations. And I will ask you, is there anybody, Times of India Group, anybody here?
They won't count.
No, that,
Yeah.
so I'm coming to that.
No,
I'm
hang
coming
on.
to that.
No, we do have from Times Group.
No, I'm coming to that.
No, well, yeah.
No, I'm coming to that. Times of India Group, how many? One. India Today Group? So now, okay, you're forgiven, right? You are a Purana Papi. India Today Group, HT?
We had a few HT people.
No,
also
but
moderating
I'm asking for this hall. HT? TV 18? One. So these four groups, Hindu?
They're watching it online.
No. Hindu, no. Hang on. Hindu, Telegraph, ABP, The Tribune, Malayalam Manorama. No. This is 95% of Indian audiences. Bhaskar, Jagran, the biggest readership for any newspaper in the world. So, first of all, these discussions, and it's a good thing that you're doing it, but for us to think that because some of us can criticize the media, which is not available, which doesn't even bother joining us in these debates, we are covering the media is wrong. We first of all have to acquire the expertise to cover the media. So if we cover the media, at least give our fellow media the gift of competence and training to be able to cover the media. I can see many stories which are not criticizing the media, but stories that I've seen in many places about this 10% duty. I mean, I read those stories and I know this is zero knowledge of media economics, and many such things. Let me complete. Let me complete.
Just a second.
Let me complete.
See, now this is not Arnab's show. This is Abhinandan's show.
I know,
just
but
let me.
no.
You have to.
So I'm not Arnab.
Yeah.
You can be Abhinandan, but let me complete my argument.
Because I want to go on to the rest as well.
No. I will come to the rest as well. So let me say my piece. So criticizing the media is not the same as covering the media. You talked about the Express and the Hindu. We never ran stories running down each other, but I do say in Siddharth's presence that the intellectual argument on the nuclear deal in public debate was fought between the Express and the Hindu, and the Express won, right? Many other arguments, the Hindu won. So, so those are intellectual arguments, but we never called Hindu names, or Hindu never called us names. We never said they are leftists. They never said we are right-wing. But having said that, coverage. Look at the way Washington Post covers Fox News. They do real coverage, real research, come out with facts, give them a chance to get back. Fox News bothers to get back to them. See Wall Street Journal.
And they appear on each other's platforms.
Wall Street Journal, which is owned by Murdoch. Wall Street Journal breaks the story on Murdoch's papers tapping people's phones illegally, right? That is done the old-fashioned journalistic way. So if you cover the rest of the media, give them, Guardian, give them the courtesy also of journalistic skills. I am afraid many of you who call yourselves watchdogs don't have those skills. Okay. The other thing, you don't.
Okay, now I have to more. One thing, Shekhar, hang on. Shekhar, just 1 second. Okay,
So
please listen to me.
Madhu's point. I can't let it be.
But Madhu, you have others.
No,
Madhu, just
let others talk. No, Madhu's point, because you said...
Shekhar, you're gonna have to let others speak, man. Come on, 1 second. Yeah,
you will get speak.
You have spoken twice the amount. Now you're doing.
You can't stop me whenever you want to.
No, I'm not. I have to give everybody a certain amount of time, and I urge you in a civil discussion.
I'll take 20 seconds.
Okay, then please take 20
to answer
seconds.
Madhu's question. You said there's nobody from the Times here. Is there anybody in the Indian media, in any organization, Express, Hindu, Times of Express, Hindu, Hindustan Times, TV18, NDTV, wherever, who can get Vineet Jain to answer 3 questions for them? So that is the tragedy of how we are covering the media. The big boys today can afford to ignore us.
Okay, well, no, let's stick with the panel. One sec, okay, guys.
Forward.
Okay, one sec, hang on. Okay, thank you, Shekhar. Siddharth, first of all, did you lose that argument on the nuclear deal? And secondly,
thank you for giving me the chance to respond.
Yeah. and also,
I was afraid Shekhar was going to say that I've spoken enough about myself. Now you speak about me. Look, let's not revisit the old thing. There were points. There were issues on which the Express took a clear editorial position. He once ran a piece called "Fast Breeder Reactionaries," defending the American view that the fast breeder program should come under safeguards, and we opposed that. We prevailed, but I think at the end, both Express and Hindu lost out for a variety of reasons. The nuclear deal is kind of dead in the water.
Okay, Sevanti's point that print tended not to talk about print, and that was an instruction.
Yeah,
was there some such conventional wisdom?
So let's come to the core issue. The fact is that I've worked in 3 media organizations. Bennett Coleman for about 8 or 9 years, Hindu for about 10 years, and The Wire for 4 years. At the Times of India, there was a clear, enunciated policy that the political bureau will not cover media or INB ministry except in an approved way. The correspondent who was assigned to INB was actually handpicked by the 4th floor. So things cannot be clearer than that, and stories were occasionally done on media, and they were typically done by the 4th floor to run down. So for example, Shekhar, you remember when HT and TOI were fighting their circulation wars in Delhi, and each would cling on to some survey or some report and say, we are market leaders. And so they would run these news stories, tendentious news stories as page 1 anchors. And I think HT also used to do that. So Times of India positively discouraged reporting about, any serious reporting about the media. And I suspect that in many organizations that is the case. The Hindu, not for any commercial reasons, but I think simply because it became the norm that that it may be misinterpreted if they do a story that's critical of a paper that is a commercial rival of some kind. So they tended to, it was more like an understanding that you kept off, but there was no commercial reason. The Hindu broke with that tradition during the Radia story. Maybe it did earlier, but I recall during my time there, Mr. Ram is the editor, and I was, I think, deputy chief of bureau. And we said we need to cover the story, and Ram fully agreed. And we did what the Radia covered about NDTV people, HT, Veer Sanghvi. We ran the full gamut, right? And after that, when I became chief of bureau of the Hindu, we had a correspondent designated, I think it was Prashant Jha back in the day, who was the media correspondent. This functioned perfectly well. I believe that after I left, that practice was kind of discontinued. I don't know the reasons for it. At the Wire, we cover the media. I share Shekhar's broad objection to the framing of this panel as calling out, because calling out is a small, actually I don't even like that phrase, but where you need to be critical, you will be critical. Where you need, like we ran a story the other day on this duty on newsprint, where we said, yeah, there is an issue here, but the ills of the Indian print industry run much deeper. And actually, the root cause of the perverse or dysfunctional economics of the newspaper industry lie in the pricing model that Mr. Samir Jain pioneered. And Shekhar said it's impossible to have anybody get 3 questions put an answer from Viniji, and there's one bugger who managed.
Yeah, with that
The guy from Cobra Post.
Sting.
Okay.
Yeah. Got right in there.
And the answers he got were not very flattering, and we covered that story. Because we covered that story, we got a kind of cease and desist. We were one of the few to cover the Cobra Post expose. I still think that was one of the most shocking exposes of the state of the Indian media. I say this with all my reservations and caveats about sting operations. And also it was perhaps quite sloppily done. But it was what got highlighted deserved to be covered and commented on in a fair way, and giving all organizations a chance to respond. Times chose not to respond in a timely fashion, and when stories were done, then heavy-duty legal notices saying
Ammo was brought out.
saying that we did our own sting operation against this guy. I'm still waiting for the Times of India's reverse sting on Cobra Post to be broadcast, and I think we should remind them about this.
Okay, so Jaggi, I've kind of got from Siddharth and I guess some of Shekhar of what Sevanti said, but in your view, this entire tendency of, like Shekhar said, that you have to be equipped to be able to report on the media. So, assuming it's the same pool of people HR we're working with, and if they're reporting on 10 other industries, whether it's refining, whether it is, tendering for arms, which I believe they can run into thousands of pages. What is the special skill required to report on the media that it is outside everything else that this economy does churn out? And in your view, this tendency of not reporting on the media, did it do damage or good to the credibility and to the reportage and quality of it?
Yeah, I'll first start with the logic of the Occam's razor. If something is simple and so obvious, it's most likely to be the real explanation. The reason why media never attacked each other, because they all agreed with each other. Why did they need to attack? You had only one version of what is the news. Till recently, till last 5 or 7 years, you have now alternate voices coming and speaking a different kind of language, trying to build a different kind of narrative. You may not agree with the narrative, but narrative did not exist. There was a consensus. So why would, you may occasionally disagree on a nuclear policy or some minor point of economic policy or something like that, but substantially there was a consensus. So why would you attack somebody you agree with? You can just say, I didn't like the way he combed his hair, but otherwise I agree with him. That's what it is. As far as, no.
Don't look at me either, because I don't.
Okay. The second thing, more important is, I think the separation of media from journalism for a very long time ensured, actually one of the things I will say about the Jains is that they made editors aware of what the finances of the business were. Until that time, though they may have gone beyond a certain thing and tried to make the editor the ad seller as well, but the problem really is that if you do not understand the business, how are you ever going to report on what's happening? And look at ownership. If 30% is owned by politically exposed persons or politicians, by definition, they're not going to run a media house in a commercial way. Because, and another 30% is owned by big business directly or indirectly, right? So 60% of business is going to make the remaining 30%, which is a valid part of the media, unviable. And if journalists are not going to understand this, that if you have a politician running a business, a media business, and largely it is going to be used for laundering money or any such thing, how are you going to make the rest of the media viable? So there are issues like that, and journalists willingly close their eyes to the reality of how they were funded, how they are being paid their salaries. And we know even 1 or 2 media houses went into bankruptcy in Andhra and things like that. We only know that after the event, when they go belly up. So I think...
That's not true just for media. Satyam Raju won the Golden Peacock.
Right.
And then next year he was in jail.
Correct.
So,
so
again,
you need to understand. You need to understand the economics of the media in order to be able to critique it. And actually, no journalists have really tried to understand how this business operates, and assuming it is a business at all in the first place. They have been told right from journalism school that this is not a business. This is some kind of public service that you're doing. So if that is the case, how will they ever write on the media?
But isn't, and I'll throw this open to everybody, and everybody can, take their designated time and answer that question. And this time I'm looking at Shekhar. But Sevanti, you, just before we started this, you said that, I decided to shut it down because there were so many portals that came up, and you named about half a dozen or more. But before these came out, how did news professionals react to your commentary? Was it good? Was it bad? Was it a mix of both? You thought there was an appetite for that? Was there a possibility for self-reflection? Because I have found, and Shekhar has often said that if you're in the public eye, whether it's politicians or journalists, you have to have a thick skin. And in fact, you've said that politicians tend to have a thicker skin than many others because they're used to taking it and moving on, whereas many others, especially in the news. But as a generalization.
All politicians.
But yeah, in today's day and age, true. How did people react to it? Was there an appetite for this? Or did you think that we're still not ready to look at ourselves and in a nature of critiquing ourselves, but yet remaining friendly with each other?
There was definitely an appetite for it in the audience. I mean, in people who consume the media. And as far as the media itself is concerned, no. I mean, you become unpopular very fast. Is it on?
Yeah, just keep it here. I just keep it right here. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not something that the media understands or likes. And, but people were ready for it, I think, because then those who are freelance start writing for you, but they don't have access. It's not easy to do it. It's okay to point out, what I managed to do with the resources I had is nowhere near, a tenth of what
but
needs to be done.
But is there also fear that many of these people will be in the workforce looking for jobs on the people who they were going to be commenting on?
Of course. So, no, that's another issue. Why did I shut it down, for instance? Is because there's no one who's going to take it over from you. Senior journalists don't want to be doing this. They just don't want to be doing it. They want proper careers in journalism. It's very difficult to get I know you have lots of staff at News Laundry doing all kinds of reporting, but then News Laundry is also doing other things. So it's very difficult to get a very, very good reporter who wants to just come and do this.
Because they feel they'll jeopardize their chances.
Also because it's narrow. It's a narrow subject, both. They jeopardize their chances, and it's not as exciting as covering things that are happening to the country.
Shekhar, the same question I asked, but another point I'll just throw in and you can take both. I was discussing with Jaggi upstairs that with the coming of social media, does one really need to have commentary? I mean, I can understand a story of, let's say, X took a loan, defaulted on it, or money was laundered, but general commentary, because I personally believe it keeps you on your toes, and I think it's good to have friendly sparring in within organizations, which we have, and, inter and intra-organizations. But with social media becoming the beast that it is, you think critiquing each other just feeds into that vile nature of they will use this against that? Is it just discrediting the other? So this party will feel that party is discredited, that party feels this party is discredited. So no one's consuming any news media which is cross-ideological. Do you think from the Hoot's time to today, is that a major difference, and should it matter?
Well, I think people not reading before criticizing is an old disease. It did not come with social media, right? And then once you put a label, you can say, but social media essentially is a place where you go for validation, right? So the left validates the left, the right validates the left attacks the right attacks the left. So social media is not a place where you go for wisdom, information. I don't want to use expressions like toxicity. So to think that social media somehow supplants anything else is not correct. Because if that was the case, then contrary to what we might think, and contrary to what, see, who are we? Sevanti is an honorable exception in this quartet. Three of us are refugees from what is called mainstream media. Now, this is an expression that Samara Alankar had used once, and I had then objected to it, but that's true. We are refugees from mainstream media. But mainstream media, much as we'd love to diss mainstream media is doing very well around the world. Why are people going back to the New York Times, Washington Post, Guardian? Politico is now mainstream media. People are going there because people know that what they see on social media, etc., they may get their excitement for a moment, but they don't trust it. It doesn't give them wisdom. So let's not, I think we get imprisoned by social media, and we become legends in our own eyes on Twitter, looking at our retweets, and our minds are being gamed by Twitter, because we know what will be retweeted, we know what will get praise, what will get, and then I get in a week at least 100 DMs from people saying, I said this, You might agree with it. Can you share it? Right? So I think let's not take that too seriously. At the same time, I think...
Turn it into a revenue model. Because it's just Twitter, it's not
no,
the platform.
you have to look for revenue models everywhere. And you can do a different session on revenue models. But today in India, the only truly robust and successful revenue model in Indian media is the broadsheet newspaper. That's why I don't like this 10% duty, because India doesn't make good newsprint, and recycled newsprint is more polluting than virgin newsprint that comes from outside. But I think the newspaper, more than afford it, and their readers can afford it. But let's not get distracted. Let's look at some basic things. Media must be covered. Your essential question. Media must be covered robustly. Questions must be asked. In fact, media is much more powerful now than before in all democracies. It should be covered with greater diligence. Look at America. Look at the global media. The big deal right now is the Gang of Four in Silicon Valley. What is called? GAFA. That is Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple. Right? Look at the amount of coverage these are now getting. Look at the amount of scrutiny Facebook is being put to. Look at the way Facebook now, and the print is also a beneficiary, but look at the way Facebook now is funding almost every media event in the world. There was a Reuters conference just recently in Hong Kong where the moderator asked for a show of hands, that all of you from the best media organizations in the world, how many of you have not taken money from Facebook? How many hands went up? 0, right? And since you talked about calling out, and I'm not here not to speak my mind, you have this conference sponsored essentially by Facebook. You start this conference with a conversation between you and the Facebook CEO in India. Now look at it another way. Suppose really, quote unquote, an organization we don't like as refugees, say Bennett Coleman. Many of us are refugees from Bennett Coleman, not me, never. But if Bennett Coleman held an event like this on media, right? And sponsored by Adani or Ambani, and started with a conversation between Vineet Jain and Gautam Adani or Mukesh Ambani, or if the print did that, you guys will go apocalyptic, right? So calling out is...
So that's a good thing. So
I said apocalyptic. I didn't say apoplectic. You will say apocalypse now, right?
Okay,
so I deliberately used apocalyptic. So I'm saying that calling out is a loaded thing, right? So just because you have this, now I'm not saying that because of this your content is loaded. I'm just saying that calling out and judging people is a loaded thing to do. Question people on facts, question people on their economics, figure out why job losses are taking place. Don't question people for laying off people, employers lay off people because they can't afford to pay.
Right.
So that's my point.
So, Sid, coming to you, but since you did mention this, I think the assumption is that because you would do it, you don't expect it to be done to you. My point is this, and because you mentioned this, we're not at all self-conscious about that. You're right. You're right that almost every media event is sponsored by Facebook. Okay, let me finish.
Every media event doesn't...
Let me finish.
No.
Let me finish. No one interrupts you,
You are getting away with it. Every media event does not feature Facebook people.
Have I finished? Shekhar, I must humbly request you, just like you get a runway to talk uninterrupted, you must learn to give that courtesy to another person as well, okay? That's very important. And I think there is a tendency of saying that since I know this shit, I know best, I will talk over everyone. I'm sorry, that is discourteous. I will not interrupt you. You don't interrupt me or others. That would be great. So I think that is a very valid question, and I think it should be asked. But because someone asks it of us, doesn't mean we won't ask it of others. We don't believe he who has not sinned raised the first stone. Of course, we're all compromised in some way or the other. To what extent? Is it ideological? Is it financial? Is it political? And that must be questioned, because maybe this question asked by 10 people will make us find someone who is not Facebook. Maybe we'll charge all these people $10,000 to enter. But just because, and I think you must call it out and you must run a piece on it. Because I don't believe
that I cannot be called out because I am too cool for school. Please call us out, but that means everybody should call everybody out, whether it is the quality of their content, whether the nature of the finances, or whether it is just bad journalism. And nobody has God's word. And there is a problem with legacy media editors thinking there is God's word and there's everybody. The only true thing is mathematical theorems, and journalism is not that. Thank you. Please, go ahead. Because I have gone, I'll let you respond and then we move on to
I've done my
Siddharth.
I've done my bit of calling out, which was to make a point that calling out is not the issue. For me, the story is the domination of a media group. Facebook is a media group. The domination of a media group on the global media, and global media's economics is now linked to what is happening with this group of four, because all our revenues are being vacuum cleaned by them. So if you look at the economic problems of global media, global news media, you have to, I'm not saying somebody is right or wrong, but these are issues that have to be questioned. Now, the question I have to ask myself, also as a refugee, but as an old media person, is, can you go on questioning the people who sponsor you? You question the corporates who sponsor you all the time. But can you can you question media companies that sponsor you? That's a tricky question. All of us have to find answers.
Yeah, and which must be asked. And I think just because it is asked to me doesn't make it an invalid question. Sorry, Sevanti, you were saying something before men just hog the conversation.
When you're through with your calling out debate, I would just like to...
Please.
So finish that first.
It's done. Please, go ahead. Go.
Done.
Okay, this term calling out is narrow, and I have a problem with it. We are talking about 2-3 things. You're talking about media being a beat, which it is not now. It's become one in the last, let's say, 10 years, and that's the business of media.
I think I think actually the thing is the mic moves with your, so you got to like, yeah, that's not, but she moves her face now. So Madhu, so you just have to move. Madhu, yeah, just.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, the trick is if you keep it touching your chin, then no matter where your chin goes,
But
the mic
it'll
moves
be
with it.
booming.
No,
Okay, so if you can hear me, I'm saying there are 2 issues. One is media accountability. Another is just covering media as a beat. It's a huge beat now. I mean, it's a huge industry. There are many, many thousand crores in it in India. So how regular is the coverage? How thorough is it? That's one. And 2, media accountability is looking at your finances, looking at there's so much business press in India. They don't look at the finances of the media, I don't think, anywhere near the way they should. It's not a regular activity. So that, again, is part of being a beat. Thirdly, regulation. Media accountability is also ensured through regulation. We have the Press Council, which is not supposed to have teeth. We have a self-regulatory NBSA, which doesn't have teeth. So any confident country and a confident media ought to have proper regulation in place, which makes things happen. Okay?
Okay, we have to end a question answer because I don't want the audience to lose the chance of having a panel such as this and not get questions because we have overshot. So I know soft-spoken Jaggi and soft-spoken Siddharth got lesser time, so I will let them take the first set of questions and whatever is left, Shekhar and Sevanti can take. And since I am just a newbie...
Soft-spoken Sevanti also.
Yeah, soft-spoken Sevanti also. So let's start from the back. Do we have any questions there? And then I'll move in front. Oh, no questions? So then we can continue with our little... Okay, sorry, we have one here. I think they'll all be coming for jobs to one of these people next. That's why they have no questions.
So my question is not really about calling out in the sense of a negative coverage, but I'm just talking about positive, not just positive, but covering what you talked about, Sevanti. I'm a PR professional who has, in the past, handled media. And there used to be a beat called Media and Entertainment, which was covering media. That seems to not be... there was very little. It was hard to push the agenda of, for example, I was handling a small B-town radio channel, and it was very difficult to get the point across that the country needed privatization of radio further, etc., whatever the agendas were. So why is it that it is so difficult to actually cover media itself, not necessarily calling out?
Sevanti, or do you guys want to take that? Why is that so difficult since there used to be such a beat?
Largely because I think those who want to be media persons are obviously looking to be in media. So I think they would definitely be careful about, unless you completely dislike somebody and you know you're never going to go there for a job or for ad, for anything, then yeah, it works. But otherwise, I think people are very careful about it. Most journalists I know do not want, however much they may rubbish other journalists or other media that they think is performing below par, they will not say that openly. So that is one part why individuals do not take. Organizations do not take because they are a club. I mean, except for the, as you said, the dropouts, like some of them here, I think most of them actually have their commercial interests are very similar. So I think one will, I think the proprietor will tell you not to take on the other guy.
Yeah. But nothing warms my heart as much as you, Siddharth, and Shekhar clubbing yourself as one group. Gad ho gaya mera dil. But
he's the guy wearing saffron.
Jaggi and I have worked together for a long time in the same organization.
Okay, so after this, we're going to hold hands and say Mumbai or whatever it is. Okay, go, Sid.
Yeah, I don't think of myself as a refugee from mainstream media. I think of myself as a defector from big media. And that's why I don't have a problem pointing fingers at big media. I think we are redefining the mainstream. Quite honestly. The reason why, first of all, I would contest, ma'am, your suggestion or claim that there was ever a media beat. The fact is that there's never been any consistent reporting of the media across big media platforms. There hasn't been that. Episodic, perhaps. Today, a major reason, or the major reasons why this doesn't happen, is because the largest, I'm offering a hypothesis, maybe people can agree or disagree. The largest media stories of the last 4 or 5 years have revolved around political pressure from this government on the media. How do you cover a story like the exit of Bobby Ghosh from the Hindustan Times before his contract runs without, perhaps if you're a media proprietor, triggering the same set of processes that compelled HT to get rid of him? Right? So if you were to cover that story honestly, then you would irritate people in government. If you were to cover the exit of Punya Prasoon Vajpayee from ABP News, you would irritate people in government. If you were to cover the exit of my former colleague, Dr. Harish Khare from Tribune, you would irritate people in government. If you were to cover stories of, if you were to do stories of news reports, totally innocuous news report of Amit Shah's assets having grown between his last, whenever he filed his affidavit, and I think in 2016, when he joined the Rajya Sabha from Gujarat, and for which he had a perfectly, as it turned out, perfectly valid explanation of some property that his mummy owned being sold or whatever. Times of India and DNA run stories. So 300% growth in Amit Shah's assets. The stories vanish online. And there's no explanation given. How do you cover this story?
Sure.
Without irritating Amit Shah, right? So that's a major factor. And the second factor, of course, is that a lot of the stories also revolve around corporate pressure on media houses in the sense of, whether it's defamation cases or ads being withdrawn.
And of course, the kind of leverage the government has.
So these are all, essentially, proprietors are risk-averse people. And just as they have trimmed their sails on the coverage of anything that is contentious, similarly, they keep off media. I think that's the hypothesis I would offer, and I think it's quite plausible.
Okay, and I have one more. I want to do this. It's unrelated, but I just thought it would be fun. Because commenting on each other should not just be about discrediting someone who has an opposing ideological point of view. I think if you see something good, that can be called. If you see something bad, that can be called. Now, Swarajya and Wire are as dissimilar as it can be. So, Siddharth, tell us 2 things about Swarajya that you love. And Jaggi, tell us 2 things about Wire that you love. And I'll give Shekhar the last word, but that's not yet whenever I'm told. That you tell us 2 things about Newslaundry that you love. Come on, let's learn to love each other a little bit.
This love fest, I don't know where this is going, but...
Okay, hang on. This is going to be important. We got to listen to
Swarajya
this.
and I both have the same sponsor. How's that?
yeah.
and we love them. And we want them to keep supporting each other. They're supporting us both again, right? That's we
Okay,
have
cop out. Okay,
IPSMF. Seriously speaking, what we recognize that not just Swarajya, but there is a whole new ecosystem of, for want of a better term, right-wing media. They may characterize themselves differently, and I don't mean it in a pejorative sense, which exists, has traction, and needs to be taken seriously. And so we have tried our hat tip to the work Jaggi and colleagues are doing is to actually we do a regular column where we keep off any, basically presenting to our readers what is it that it's called Right Side Up, and we began it during the election, and we are keeping it going. Looking at what are the major stories or issues that Swarajya, or there's something called Right Log, or Right Log, which, and a few others who are part of that ecosystem. So that's our hat tip. And of course, Jaggi is somebody that we love because he's always very civilized in all interactions.
Right. Jaggi, two things about Wire that you love. Love.
Well, I think the fact that they left mainstream and big media and thought that even though they did not necessarily have a dissimilarity of view, that they felt that they needed to demonstrate that there could be yet something to the thing and everything. I think that's courage for people to, people who sitting on a high perch to come and say, okay, I'll start all over again from the ground up. I think that's something to be admired, even though we might disagree on every single point.
And the second?
Second is, I think...
he's reaching. He's like, kuch to hoga.
I think I admire the point that if he fails, the ecosystem doesn't fail. But if I fail, the ecosystem will fail. My alternative narrative is more important to this country than his alternative narrative, because that somebody will carry on the flag no matter what he does. But in my case, I think I'm one of the people who started the process early. And I think I need to go on.
I see. Interesting. Okay. So what you love about him is that even if he fails, the narrative goes. Okay, and Shekhar, I've been given the timeout. Two things about newslaundry that you love.
Manisha, I think the first is quite easy. Why are you leaking my answer sheet? People leak.
Exactly. Please do not cut into Shekhar's time. So that
no,
is
it's okay.
business.
We are not right. People leak question papers. This guy is leaking my answers. So Manisha, I tell you why. Manisha and some more stuff on newslaundry, because I'll tell you the big problem in Indian media, having been around for a long time. Indian media has never been as humorless as it is now. There is no humor. There is no satire. We take ourselves so seriously now.
You have a fantastic boy. This boy is amazing. I've seen him.
But he's the only one, right?
So when was the humor?
That's...
Listen, Madhu, no, even in the
There are a lot of channels offering humor.
Even in the emergency, V.D. Trivedi wrote his middle article in the Times of India, and if you read it carefully, there was a lot of humor, right, and satire. So there is no humor, no satire, no irony.
Manisha gives us that, okay, thank you. And second thing?
And we need a lot more of it. And second, I like the irreverential view that you have of the media world. So the fact that you are not fazed by people and their seniority is a very good thing. Because, I love... I love insubordination. I love insubordination. And I'll tell you, since you talked about media covering the media, and you said, do we welcome us being covered? I will tell you, in recent years, the only media organization that really covered the media well and intelligently has been Mint, right? And that's been primarily because of one person there, Shuchi Bansal. And Shuchi has then built and mentored other people around her who have covered the media well. And one of them did a story on the Express. In fact, took out a whole internal email of mine, published the entire email.
In the Mint?
In the Mint, in a year in which we had done badly. So it was an admonition from me as the company's CEO, because I've always had two jobs, right? As the company's CEO, she published it, and with some implications and all. And we were not happy with it. We were quite irritated with it. But what did we do? In 48 hours, we figured that she had done that job well. She had covered all her bases, and what did we do? We hired her as our media correspondent.
Good job.
Right?
So we're looking out for her now.
Her name is Archana Shukla. Archana Shukla.
Archana Shukla. Okay,
So good media coverage is something that we also appreciate.
Okay. Thank you all and for being such a wonderful audience. Thank you, panel, for keeping it spirited and fun. Always a learning experience to Sevanti, but she doesn't love or hate. She's Zen. She's Buddha. Okay. Oh, you do? Okay. So thank you, audience. We all love each other.